Jocelyn. Yes, our meeting is being recorded. Bienvenidos a Cafecito y Conversación. I got my own coffee here, so I hope everyone gets their own coffee. FYI, there's real experts in this group on coffee, so I'll leave that to another time. We should have a Cafecito en Conversación on coffee only. Pero bueno, let's see if today it's a great day. Catholic Volunteer Network is celebrating their 60th anniversary this whole year, like 23, 24. Were created 60 years ago, 1963. And right now there's over 100 communities that are part of the Catholic Volunteer Network. And for a long time, we've been trying to get LaRED, the National Catholic Network of Pastoral Juvenil Hispana, to talk with CVN. So, I mean, individuals know each other, but today we have the opportunity of welcoming Jocelyn. She's the Associate Executive Director for Catholic Volunteer Network, and she's also based in California, so it's great to have you here. And Jocelyn and I will be kind of conversing a little bit and then also opening up for questions a little bit later. So Jocelyn, welcome. Welcome to LaRED. Welcome to your Cafecito en Conversation.
Gracias, José. Yo puedo hablar en español un poquitito, pero es en inglés, es más mejor para mí. Pero hola a todos. Yeah, my name is Jocelyn. I live in California, and my children are in Spanish immersion because they don't have a Tagalog immersion for Filipinos like me here. And we hope, right? We make this investment that they go there because the world is more than just the white experience that so many of us have had in the educational experiences, at least that I have had in our Catholic schooling here in the Bay Area. So my parents have been from the Philippines, and I was the first one born here. And so I love seeing the world and our experience through a multi-lens of cultures. And I see where that could be a gift and also be provocative of the tensions that it has for different generations and what we're able to kind of grow in together. So I'm excited about CVN. I'm excited about 60 years of celebrating people all over from our nation going all over the world because of their faith. Like they believe that our faith compels them to improve the world and to improve relationships between people. And so in our 60th year, we're excited to have this conversation with LaRED and to say, come on, let's do this together. And what is it that you're doing that CVN can help and support and uplift? And where are the places that that you would like to see your life a little more fulfilled through service that we can help you with? So I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Gracias, Jocelyn. I want to give a shout out to Cecilia Flores. She's the new Executive Director for Catholic Volunteer Network for CVN. Ella está un ratito aquí, un momento, y tiene otras reuniones, pero no sé si quieres decir un hola.
Sí, solo quería saludarles. Lo siento no poder conectar todo el tiempo, pero soy filipina, por si se están preguntando, siempre tengo que entrar con eso porque a veces cuando empiezo a hablar español me queda viendo la gente como que, ¿qué está pasando aquí? Pero yo viví 6 años en Comayagua, Honduras, después de graduarme de la U. Y ahí fue donde aprendí español con los niños de la calle de Comayagua. Entonces yo digo que mi español es muy sabor catracho, caliche de la calle, pero como lo aprendí, pues claro, ser ya parte de esta organización de la red de servicio católico para mí es algo muy profundo a mi corazón porque, como les dije, yo dediqué 6 años de mi vida en servicio a la gente hondureña, que realmente me impactó la vida y pues cambió todo el curso de lo que yo me imaginaba para mí y solamente para lo mejor, ¿no? Dios es tan bueno conmigo, entonces yo siempre aprovecho las oportunidades de conectar con la comunidad latina porque yo siento latina de corazón. De hecho, cuando me regresé a California después de cumplir mis años de misión, empecé a asistir una parroquia, es la parroquia hispana de aquí, de Sacramento, no tienen nada en inglés y yo voy allá porque me siento más en casa. Entonces, todavía soy muy involucrado en todo lo que es el Ministerio Hispano al nivel nacional también. Entonces, estoy muy agradecido por todo lo que ustedes están llevando a cabo como LaRED. Yo siempre decía, cuando yo trabajaba en la diócesis aquí en Sacramento, las reuniones del Ministerio Hispano eran los mejores que había. De comida, de ambiente, de diversión y también de una fe tan profunda en comunidad. Así que me invitan a lo que sea. Gracias.
Sí, gracias, Cecilia. Oh, that's so great. I mean, you gave us such a good excuse for the segue now into our conversation. Like your life was transformed, and not just for, for learning Spanish after 6 years in Comayagua in Honduras, but then the transformational experience of having served, because we all come from a Catholic church that will get us prepared for the sacraments, that will get us involved in groups and in ministries locally. But then when we explore this other side of service, servicio, misión, entrega a los demás, diaconía, I think that's where we start kind of making it real for some people, and for our world. Right now, I just want to highlight that as part of the Década, if you can download the La Década book, it does emphasize service. And in response, this is from CVN. This is the small booklet, and this was the previous one. So it's very handy to actually share with others. But also there's a section in Spanish. So tenemos la sección en español en Catholic Volunteer Network y la sección en inglés. But all to say that there are resources to connect people to people. And the big question is, of course, and here Jocelyn can lead us in reflecting, why faith-based service today? Why faith-based service today? And what does that mean? I mean, ya Cecilia gave us a clue, but Jocelyn, lead us in this part, please.
Sure. I can take some guesses as far as like how it's alive now. It's kind of like in God's time, or Kairos, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, or forever. And I think that faith-based service, or service based out of a connection to our very identity as made in the image and likeness of God. Like I wish I can say that on the website, but people are like, what are you talking about? But for people living and working in our particular experience of faith, it's about going to church and it's about the sacraments, but it's really about being on mission and being sent forth. Because of that experience that you've had in church or in community or sharing Eucharist or listening to God's word in your life, now what? Like I think that's perpetual question. I know that's been a perpetual question for me as a person of faith, and then to find that there are communities of people that value living a life that can help other people, including themselves, and have a mutual engagement of like improving our communities. Like when we can do that, then wow, that is God actually active in our life, right? But I know I'm talking to the choir. But I know that when people ask you, like, why faith-based anything right now in a world that has, we see lower numbers of people going to church, or we see lower numbers of people identifying as having any faith or any religion. And I'd like to say that I think it's just some of the organized religions. But then you see, like, you all know the data, that your numbers, the Hispana numbers, right, are like higher than the whites, or even the blacks, or even the Asians, and part of me is like, y'all, why are we aggregating first, right? And what is it about when a church receives somebody and loses people Like, what is the movement, right? Like the Spirit is moving in our entire world to conjure something up in our hearts that is connected with another person. Now, however we want that to look like, whether it's worship or service or building a good life for me and my family, like whatever it is, I feel like faith-based service speaks to the people who want to be a part of an institution that does something, or people not in a part of an institution. Like so many people in CVN have over the years, whether or not I agree with it or not, have kind of called being a part of CVN as a parachurch. Or like, oh, I go to the annual thing because that feels like church to me. Like I feel like this is the community of people who are living out their faith. And when sometimes I go to a church, it seems hypocritical. But when I do my service, it doesn't feel hypocritical there. So I wonder if there's a little bit of the hypocrisy that service, the invitation to service, addresses, particularly with our young people. The young people who are like, yeah, I don't know about that. And again, not every young person is like that. I know a lot of really actively engaged young people. I don't want to say they're all the same, but in the diversity of our generations and how we are exposed to a practice of our faith. It could be in worship, it could be in service. And I think that service, particularly when we're like being sent forth to do something or to be somebody or to care for people, really addresses a lot of the young people's questions these days about purpose, identity, right? And that faith-based service gives them a container, a group of people that have a similar value. And instead of talking about it, they just live it. I mean, I'm talking about it, but you all get it, right? Like, you know that you just live it. When you're living it, that's attractive. And so it's no wonder that our member programs who have these service programs, they attract people because of the people doing the service. So over the years, I'm just going to say this out loud too, over the years, we have attracted a similar looking group of people, and we have incentivized a similar group of people because it's the same kind of people talking to their same groups. Over time, when we've taken a look at this, they predominantly are recent college grads, white women between the ages of 22 and 24. So if they're doing a volunteer year and they love it, and then they use the book and then they tell people and they're talking to people that are similar to them, that's how we continue to perpetuate who we have. And we incentivize that. So we continue to go to colleges and say, hey, it worked. That person we got from that college, so we'll go back to that college. And now we're taking a moment in our 60th year saying, hey, hold on, all of those old forms, maybe we need new wineskins, everybody. Because if you take a look at all the different cultures, and Cecilia and I are just two examples of some Filipinas who, I mean, I grew up in a family that was like, so you're going to be a lawyer, right? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I like studying law, Well, you have billable hours, right? Then you can really make a name for yourself. And so when I told them that I wanted to do service and do full-time service instead of doing something else where I would get paid, I think that was a big shock for them. And was I going to do something different? No, partly because they saw that my volunteer heart and my service heart through our church experience was where I needed to be. And so they supported it. And they may not have understood it, but that's, I think, the healthy tension. I saw my parents being a very lively example, and they're still like doing it now. They're in their 80s and they're at church every day. And they're the ones hosting like the senior citizen things, I'm like, you're in your 80s. They should be doing this for you. They're like, oh, it's okay. We'll just get the food. We'll get the whatever. We'll do the prayer. We'll drive people even. So I came from that experience where service seems like such a big verb, but that's just how we lived our life. Like that's how we expressed our faith. And so I think that there may be a discrepancy sometimes in between our cultures and this American version of like, sign up for service and commit to a full year. But I think our communities are already doing that. Like we're already living our faith in ways that is improving the lives of people around us. And I think that's how we need to just share those stories, and then it becomes a little more, oh, that's what you're doing. Okay, then why do you have to sign up for something? Why can't you just do that? Oh, because I get a scholarship. So if I want to go to college, they'll pay for part of it. Or if I want to do a grad school program in this, they'll pay for it. Oh, okay, then that's where it becomes a little more, I think people's minds are opening up a little more about why faith-based service actually can help you, not just in your career, but it won't be a stumbling block to your career. In fact, it'll enhance your ability to actually be a better resource for each other. I don't know about you all, but
Yeah, and
families, they
you're
want
talking.
money. So,
Well, that's the thing. You're touching on the two things that we have heard collectively in LaRED, but also in campus ministry. I mean, coming from St. Mary's University in Texas, one of the Marianist universities, we hear a lot of the students saying, for the Hispanic community, it's the whole family that has a say whether I go to college or what's my next job. So even la abuelita, will be wanting to know, are you going to make money or not? Are you going to be serving the others? And it's interesting because when we look at the data for recent college grads in our Hispana and Latina graduates, the majority are going to helping professions, healthcare, teaching, education, um, community services, and also law enforcement. I mean, they're not going to be making loads of money, but they're going to be serving their own communities. And there's a lot of that I want to give back. So a lot of our young people are already thinking, están pensando a lifelong commitment to serve others. Están pensando en servicio as something that is part of what we do. But then how an experience through a program in CVN and Catholic Volunteer Network will enhance maybe that preparation for a lifelong commitment. And I think you touch on that, and you also touch on the fact that it's good to share with the families, okay? Que la familia sepa. And sometimes we can help in LaRED to actually kind of assist with that conversation, because it's hard. It's hard. When you have a recent grad that is thinking about, in this economy right now, a lot of our recent grads will have jobs right away, and then how to mediate and how to intercede for them when they want to tell their families, I just need another year to think through things, but also to have an experience that I know I won't have it again if I start right away in the industry, if I start right away in the business. So thank you for sharing that. And when we talk about sharing our stories, I mean, there must be tons of stories in CVN archives, or even in your own conversation with the member programs about this situation on how to support young people who want to do a year of service, or two, or maybe a semester. I don't know. There's different options. I know that in campus ministry it's hard to get a lot of the young people who are excited for service to actually literally come to mass and offer those first fruits spiritually. And the other side is also true. There's a lot of our young people who help in liturgy and music, but then call them to service, and they're like, well. So I think we have the opportunity to lead our young people in understanding that it is both and. That our prayer has to be a faith in action at some point, and that our action actually informs our prayer life. So there's that, there's always that, tension in some ministry settings. But any stories that you can tell us, or even some suggestions that you have gathered from some of the programs?
yeah, I think as you were talking, Jose, there are two things that came up for me, the words discernment and then network, right? So discernment, we have a ton of different discernment tools on our website. That's easy. None of it is closed off to anybody. You can just go to CatholicVolunteerNetwork.org and there's a ton of material. In fact, because we produce that, the response directory for, many years, over 40 years, that one that we used to send out to people. Now it's just PDF and it's online and it's live. So anytime you download it, it's as true and updated today, like right now. And then you may have a different version tomorrow if you download it, because we wanted to make sure it was accessible to people. But that used to be a way that we would introduce the conversation of discernment for people. Now we're looking at ways to, build the discernment tools. So discernment retreats, so like lay Maryknoll missioners, they provide a discernment retreat for people considering service. And that's, one of our member programs, and many of our member programs offer that. So as you're thinking, or of a student, or of a family that's in this place, there are resources within our membership. You just have to reach out to me or Jose, and that we can connect you, partly because we do know that this is bigger than just a decision of a job or a decision of, this is lifelong. They may or may not know it. And in our Catholic spheres, in our Catholic settings, in our faith-based settings, in our communities, we have the tools for it. And I think that engaging with CVN to help with that has actually informed us. So in the last, I don't know, probably decade, we've heard that there are limitations to doing faith-based service in the way that our model is currently situated. Our model is full-time. It requires that they live in community with other volunteers. Oftentimes, it'll require that they live outside of where they were raised. It requires some mostly English speaking. There are some placements that are bilingual. So all of these different layers just presented as roadblocks, or somebody said, oh gosh, but I have all these loans from colleges, like I have to start paying that back, and I can't take a year of service off, but maybe I can do something every Saturday, right? But maybe I can do something like this. So our member programs currently are experimenting with lots of different models of service that then expand the ways that people can live into service, because full-time service is one thing, one way. And we have been about this one way for a long time. But what we're seeing is, if we work with high schools to build a service experience with the kids who are involved in liturgy, let's say, and they get to go to a different church and do liturgy, but they do service because there's a nonprofit that's attached to the church, then they see that their faith is bigger than this one practice. And so when we can build in those pieces, we're a part of a whole pipeline of more service, more immediate, more impactful, not just crisis oriented, but like we're actually changing how we become family to each other in the world. And it's not just lip service. We're really changing how our local communities are resourced. So it doesn't seem like only some people have something and a lot of people have minimal, or have to share the one potato and make it creative, right? So this is about improving and upgrading how we are in the image and likeness of God in our communities, not just in us as an individual. So the value of, again, CVN and these members are that they're happy to help. They're happy to have a conversation and they're happy to network. And so that's the thing, and that's the advantage for these young people who may be considering, even if they don't want to do full-time service, if they want to work in nonprofit and offer, they want to work for a school and be a good teacher. We have grad school programs that, if they enroll in that particular service year, will pay for their credentializing in their state, and will give them a community of other teachers who are similar in that position to them, their age group, their, like their values. And then that'll be a better and deeper experience. And then hopefully they'll be a teacher longer than just the year or two that they're doing it for. But we're really rebuilding how our communities are helping each other, building our teacher workforce, building our healthcare workforce, building all of those places through service, right? So service doesn't mean you don't get anything out of it. You get a ton of things out of it. And how do we leverage how we get more things out of it for more people?
Gracias, porque, I was struck by one of the reports from CVN a couple of years ago that the top kind of the top benefit of being part of a member program of the Catholic Volunteer Network was actually that the volunteers knew that they were growing spiritually, because I'm glad you mentioned the retreat part, the discernment part. There's a lot of accompaniment that is in place now. So there's that. It's like an added bonus to because some of the students and young people can sign up to any nonprofit or any agency, but then having the opportunity to go to a faith-based program actually es como enfocarse en esa espiritualidad en la acción, faith in action, that spirituality that it's again nurtured by the practice, by the actual doing something and doing it in the spirit. So from your vantage point, what would you want, or what would you envision from LaRED, from network to network? How can we build this I don't know, this goodwill and also this collaboration? How do you see this in the next year or two?
Gosh, that's a great question. Partly because I'm, learning as we go too, with lots of different ways that we can connect. I don't think, it's all the time money needs to be exchanged between associations and, whatnot. But like, if we want to share our resources with each other, that's what we do. I'm looking out because I know Maureen, and part of me wants to ask her, as a member program, with Marianist Pulse, like, what do you see is a good connection? Because you are LaRED and you are CVN, and there may be some opportunities that you see from your vantage point. So if you want to think about it, I can riff a little bit, Maureen, and then maybe invite you in to share. And I think that with LaRED, like, well, one of it is use our resources. Like, you're talking with people, you're talking to families, you're talking to people all the time trying to figure out like a practice of their faith. And so if you sense that they would be open to service, have them create a profile on our website so that they could be connected to our member programs. There may even be one near them that they didn't know. There's a member map, so you can kind of see if they're in California or New Mexico or Ohio, wherever, that they can be connected. We're pretty personal. So, we're a small staff of 3 full-time people, and great people like Jose, who are on our board, that like just want to help. Right. So, so you're like, oh, I see this possible connection. We're about the possibilities too. And actually like making it super easy that somebody could be engaged in a community of faith. But we have very structured programs that people can sign up for the year, including like an organization like Marianist Pulse. And we value that we have spirituality nights, community nights, all these retreats, all this formation. So if you're a big formation person and wondering what's happening with our young adults, or what's happening with our people in second generation careers, there's something in service, or even working for one of our service programs, like on staff. So we have a job board, we have all these things that like, it's a bigger network, not just the person doing the full-time volunteer work, right? But that all these nonprofits, all these campuses, all these people committed to a faith that does justice, because we live in, some kind of solidarity and an urge for pursuing the common good, but by preferencing, the poor and marginalized in our midst. Like, I think that's like, we're very gospel-y in that way. And so it becomes this practice, even if people don't want to be in a formal experience of church. And when people are beginning to not identify with a religious experience, there's still something very advantageous about identifying with an engaged community who are living out their faith. So Maureen, would you have anything to add or to suggest?
Sure. I mean, I think you captured that really beautifully, Jocelyn. And I apologize for coming late, but when Jose says to be somewhere, like, I be there. I jump if he says jump. So grateful to be with you all. And quick glimpse. So I'm with the Marianist Pulse program. Jose Julian serves on our advisory council and has been deeply connected to the program for years. And Jose and I have worked together in ministry in a lot of ways. So that kind of gives you a quick sense. our program sponsored by the Marianists, we recruit in essentially three universities: the University of Dayton, St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas, and Chaminade University in Honolulu. So as we talk about connection, just to, again, to give you kind of a glimpse of where we work with and who walks with us in doing that. I think there's a number of pieces LaRED could do. So there's the piece around like helping us identify gaps and encouraging programs to do critical reflection of how do we support the communities of who our volunteers are, and embracing who they are and sharing that. So that's certainly a piece of it. Something that I've really experienced over the years in working with Jose is helping to name the pillars and the attributes and the really the priorities of our organization in a way that really speaks to young adults of different communities and different cultural backgrounds and to their families. So I say that because, there's so many communities in which service is really ingrained, right? It's in what you do all day. It's in that your entire family community lives in your house, and you are with grandma, and you are with auntie, and you're with, right? And so when something is just who you are, how can you see that professionally in a sense of not just, the career in which you choose, but also through the lens of, engaging in this opportunity to do a year of service? Can that be a professional decision? The other piece that I, have found as an example is years back, we were having some challenges, particularly in Hawaii in recruitment. And some of the campus ministers we partnered with, started to talk about, well, families are really comfortable with the idea of like military service, this concept, it's service to the country, it's service to, but really encouraging us to consider this service to the church and, kind of changing our language. It really reflected who we are and what we do, but finding a better way to communicate that and then putting that into what we call our family and mentor resource, which we have available both in English and in Spanish. Having those resources available and having people to accompany us who are also accompanying young adults to say, this is where these things align. Like it's the same thing, we're calling it differently. How do we broaden our understanding of it and how we capture it for folks? And I think that's where a lot of that networking piece and being in relationship can be helpful. At least, that's certainly been something that's been helpful for me in having Jose by my side, essentially.
No, gracias for that, because actually I was gonna say, this year and last year, you basically had community members from the Latina community, two Latinas, and navigating those conversations. I know that it must be very interesting because we're asking them to, let's say, get out of their comfort zone here in Texas and go and serve in Ohio. And then they're like, okay, I've heard that there's like fall season in Ohio, because in Texas we have rain, we have, and that's it, but it's very dry. And then, so it's interesting how we're inviting people to actually move from one place to another temporarily, and then discover themselves with new talents and new capacities, and come back and put them at the service of the community where you came from. So I think that speaks beautifully to the experience of Marianist Pulse so far. Thank you, Maureen, for allowing yourself to be put in the spot right away. You see, always prepared. That's good. Excellent.
I have a thought that I'd like to share with you all, partly because when I was in high school, like I told you, the Catholic experience was really entrenched in our family, right? So Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, and part of being even growing up in that sheltered, good or bad, it's just sheltered. I only know what I know. That Catholic school was Jesuit, and they had an immersion trip after your junior year. And I got selected to go to El Salvador. And it was just a couple of years after the Uca martyrs had died. And so it was pretty alive and lively. And just 2 weeks, right? Just 2 weeks of learning and serving changed my life as a junior or as a senior in high school. And I kept in contact with my mentor, who was a Spanish teacher, who I didn't have ever, but she was on the trip and she did the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. So she told her story to me, and I just knew in my head as even a high schooler, I'm probably going to do the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, because there's something so moving about how present she could be with these high schoolers who knew nothing about El Salvador. But I felt such an affinity, right? Years later, people, it's like 20 years later, I'm working with the Ignatian Solidarity Network, and they have a big presence and a connection with the martyrs in El Salvador. And they invited me to be a chaplain for the 20th anniversary of the UCA martyrs' death, because they were bringing a delegation of campus ministers, students, all these people from the United States. Like, that was a real blessing in my life, partly because of that immersion experience that opened me up. So again, it wasn't full-time service there yet, but you all have the capacity, right, to like invite these people, the people in your families, the people where you work, the young people, the older, your colleagues even, to engage in seeing the world from a different perspective. One, being like walking with other people from the ones that we've grown up with, right? So in our very segregated world, and half of it is we segregate ourselves from each other, that we actively, and I think this is where faith comes in, like actively faith is expanding us and inviting us and luring us into meeting people who are very different from us. So in that way, as much as that's a conflict, like I was the only person of color in my JVC community, it was still a big lesson for me to be learning different ways that people are community. And that was helpful. Thank goodness, not more hurtful than helpful. And I hope that our programs now are seeing that as a potential of harm that we want to minimize, for people of color who are involved in these service programs. But yeah, so like it was really great, because now, I have this relationship with Monsignor that like is amazing for my own faith, and was able to be at his beatification and his canonization in Rome, and like and my family got to be a part of that, right? So I just wonder where people can get bit by God inviting them to serve other people, that really the benefit is on us, right? And really the benefit goes back to our communities where we've come from. And that's enriching in and of itself.
Thank you. This is amazing, Jocelyn, how, that experience with Monsignor Romero, San Oscar Romero now.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely, I think there's something there, because San Oscar Romero was also named in our meeting in 2019 as our patron saint for the Proyecto Juvenil Hispano.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool.
We keep all these connections. And speaking of connections, I want to also put in the spotlight Alberto Emery. Thank you for joining us. And I don't know if you have any thoughts or questions for Jocelyn or comment, because I know you're really involved in Pastoral Juvenil, of course. We all know you. And William, you're next. So just saying, if you want to say something or just ask, Esta es Cafecito en Conversación with Jocelyn CVN today.
Yeah, well, I have one question. This organization who you have is only religious? You have environment or energy alternative, forest, animal protections, or another organization too?
Yeah, so the way it's structured, Alberto, and mucho gusto, is a pleasure to be here with you. That like a service program like Marianist Pulse or the Jesuit Volunteer Corps or Precious Blood Volunteers, like that, like they're predominantly a ministry out of a religious organization or a religious group, but then the focus of where their placements are vary. So like the Jesuit Volunteer Corps Northwest has a lot of environmentally justice placements, and JVC Northwest holds the container for the formation and the housing and the program, and they work with the local agencies for the placement of that volunteer. So in a volunteer house of like 4, they are placed in 4 different nonprofits that can specialize in animal welfare or social work even, or teaching or whatever. So the gamut of service opportunities are huge. Does that answer it?
Sure, thank you.
Mm-hmm. But the hope in the future, especially as we're turning the corner at the 60th year, we've been committed to creating these opportunities for self-transformation of all these volunteers. And now that we've been doing it for 60 years, I'm like, yo, there are a lot of people who have been transformed. And there are a lot of people who now go back to their communities and need their community to be better. And so how do we leverage former volunteers, current volunteers, people who are working in these nonprofit agencies to leverage the advancement or the improvement of poverty, for instance? Like, how do we combat poverty now that we've got 60 years of these full-time volunteers, but now agencies and protocol and advocacy? Like, how do you do that together when you have a committed group of people who have demonstrated through their service that there can be a better way to go about things? So that's kind of on the horizon for how CVN hopes to be a container and a gathering spot for the people who are already doing the work, but not just leveraging it and leveraging their identity with each other, so that, you know, if you meet one other person in the network and the 2 of you can do something, great. And then how can we string all of those along so that we're advancing a more just society where people can live in
Before the
harmony.
pandemic time, we have a very good experience with the Sea Shepherd, Los Angeles Forest Department,
Oh yeah.
and the Sierra Club.
Yeah.
We did 3 organizations. We put many different volunteers, sometimes only for the weekend activity, and another one continue collaborating for more long time. But for that, my question, if your direction or your target is only the religious organization, or you are open to the another 2.
Yeah, and
Thank
as I look at the response, the last printed one, I didn't realize there are placements for engineering. There's placements for environmental. The environmental list is really large right now. So it's like, wow. So thank you for that question, because sometimes I'm always thinking of, you know, youth ministry and whatnot, but that's a great question. And I know, Maureen, can we put you on the spot again? Because I think some of your past volunteers have helped in Mary's Farm in Ohio. And that's an urban farming experience that actually they include renewable energy. They include a lot of cool stuff and the downtown sector. So even for our urban centers, how to revitalize using those models could be an experience for our communities. Because I know that some of our communities, Latin communities across the country, we're always looking at how to better our environment, how to better our surroundings, and how to make sure that the whole community actually is lifted up by the service of a few. If only a few can serve, but everyone wants to get involved somehow. So Maria, I don't know, any experience from that one, or any other that I haven't mentioned?
Yeah, no, let me see if I can build on that a little bit, Jose. So we certainly, you know, for us, we're a smaller program, but reflective, I think, of a lot of other programs that do have a wide variety of partnership and nonprofit organizations. You know, so I'm very intentional when I talk to young adults to talk about it's a professional year of nonprofit service, because you're coming in at a level of not necessarily being that new professional. Like, they're assuming you to come with a skill set you're learning in our organizations from the executive director. So the level at which you're engaging is pretty high for coming traditionally at your first year out of college. So we have partners, and we've had alums who have been business majors, who have been engineers, who've engaged in, you know, renewable energy with Mission Mary Cooperative. What we've been seeing more recently, and I think this might be a helpful add into this conversation, is a number of students who are coming from either a nursing background or a bio or pre-med background who are looking to do a gap year before PA school or medical school. So we've seen quite an increase in that. And it's been a great gift because then we're taking those young adults and they're serving in our shelter for those who are housing insecure. So they're working alongside communities in which, and what we found this year. So one of our volunteers, Sophia, Jose was just with her, and after her, 7 months of serving in the shelter, has determined her medical school experience will be focused on what they call street medicine. So she's, been accepted to 3 universities who allow programs with that focus. So it's really shifting kind of her next steps and giving her an applicable year of experience. So again, just kind of the many ways people's experience, education, degrees can be a gift in organizations, but also, kind of shift maybe their next steps or life after. And hopefully that's helpful, Jose.
Sí, gracias. No, this part of the conversation really good. Thank you, Alberto, for that question, because that led to exploring an angle that we were not necessarily looking into right away. And the same, William, I don't know if you have a comment or question for Jocelyn or any of us in terms of from your perspective, how can we continue to increase this service component within our own Catholic Church?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
See, loud and clear.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of physical therapy, but I was listening to the whole conversation, and for me it was, honestly, I wanted to come here because I wanted to learn a little bit more about the volunteer network, and I'm really, really impressed in the way the experience is. And there are so many connections. I lived in the Philippines. I'm from Colombia originally, but I lived in the Philippines, so I know what it's to be out there. Not so much being the different one, but being enriched by so many different experiences in life and faith and culture and socioeconomics and everything. So I know it changed your life. Look at what I am right now. I'm working in Catholic Relief Services, trying to engage with more people who hopefully will do a service. And the service is what you were mentioning before, Jocelyn, about those who already had that experience of service. What do we do? Because we still see poverty, we still see violence, we still see inequality. And most of the services, I believe, they try to expose you to that, but also to help you grow, as a young professional. What can you do? What can you contribute? And that was very interesting for me to perhaps explore a possibility, with different agencies, different things that we do. We at Catholic Relief Services, we're trying to invite people who would like to raise their voices and somehow let the legislators know that our laws should reflect our values or the values of the gospel. We're not doing politics as the dirty word indicate. We're trying to really empower people to do that. And I believe those who have been through the experience with you guys can attest to that. We need to change the structures. We need to mobilize people. And we had a wonderful experience. It was 1 year, 2 years, 6 years, whatever that was. It transformed you. So yeah, I was really impressed. Jocelyn, thank you very much for sharing your insights. It was very illustrative to me. I always heard about the Catholic Volunteer Network, but I didn't know really much. Now I'm really curious about your discernment tool, because that's something that also as a Jesuit educated person, so I'm very influenced by that, and I believe this would be very useful. And for LaRED, Jose Julian, this is the more we are able to present very down-to-earth, practical, well-structured opportunities for young people, we avoid that guessing game that the church unfortunately is falling into. Like, be good. Encounter your brother. What does it mean exactly? Where? How much it costs? What is the preparation we're going to have? We need, and there are many organizations, the Catholic Church doing an amazing job, like your organization. I'm really very happy that I took the time, even though I was walking because I need to do some therapy. But yeah, we have well-structured programs and organizations that can provide that. And sometimes this is kind of my frustration. We expect that young people will come to our churches. To what? I mean, yes, let's pray, let's encounter Jesus Christ. Yes. But reality is that nowadays our generations, younger generations, they are more socially minded. They are more conscious of the realities, the hard realities that many people have to go through, and they are not okay with it. And the Volunteer Catholic Network offers something, like, hey, not only, I don't think that the volunteer experience is only for the service per se, like you touch people's lives, but it's for you, and as a young professional, as a young person, I like to really see what are the next steps for those who have been through the experience. So, very disorganized because again, I was running and, but I'm very
Oh,
happy that I
gracias.
actually took the time to be here and I really applaud these efforts because this is what we really need to, hey, we got things to do. We're really excited things to do, things that actually transform lives. And also, I was recently in El Salvador. I also have my devotion to Monsignor Romero. There's so many connections right there. And Cardinal Rosa Chavez gave us a poster with relics of second degree of Monsignor Romero. I'm just, I'm having it framed right now. I will show it off when I have it ready.
Gracias, William. No, this is very enriching, and I'm glad, again, from your perspective, because working in CRS, Catholic Relief Services, is also another arm of the church in trying to channel the faith in action, channel the energy of everyone in the Catholic community. And I also, well, Annie, thank you for being with us today. Annie is also part of the board of LaRED, and she's supporting us today. But I don't know what any thoughts or comments as we're getting to a close of this Cafecito en Conversación.
Sure, I can add something very brief and just that, in my experience, one of the things that I've really appreciated about service is the ability of bringing people together of a lot of different backgrounds, ages, generations, into one purpose. And so yeah, that's one thing that I've really appreciated, because sometimes it's hard to bring, even in a parish or in a university or any setting, right, to bring people of different backgrounds together. And I think service is a really great way to do that, to meet people that you might never have naturally met with, but because of this interest and desire or call to serve in a particular way. And it's really beautiful to see us as human beings make that connection with another person who might be just, very different, and again, who would never in a normal circumstance meet each other. And so yeah, that's all. That's what was kind of like going through my head as I was listening to this conversation.
Gracias, Annie. And like I told you, Jocelyn, I mean, sometimes the amount of participants allow more conversation. When we have like a compact group, we always like think of, if, I don't know, 50 people can, but sometimes one of our Cafecito en Conversación that had more than 20 people, then everyone was disgruntled because like, I couldn't ask my question. So I like this format, and because we're recording it, then other people can actually enjoy this conversation and actually follow up with you, follow up with us at LaRED, or any one of us here in this call. Jocelyn, any final thoughts before Annie closes us with a prayer?
Yeah, just gracias, just thank you, and let's be in conversation. Go to our website. There are a few things that are interesting. It's going to get a refresh soon, so take a look at what we used to do, and then I'll show you the refresh in a couple weeks because we're excited about it. But really, that there are many different places to meet people at, and I think CVN is a good container or a gathering spot. So when you're confronted with a conversation or a person who has an impulse for being connected in a particular way, I wonder if there is something in our search engine that you can put in, like Sierra Club, or you can put in environmental, or you can put in racial justice, and then programs come up that have been committed for years and have trusted relationships with local communities that then your student or your friend or your whatever can come in and have almost, I don't want to say a protected experience, but like a trusted experience where they can learn and grow in the very thing that they think maybe God is doing something in them. So that's my pitch for checking us out. Again, gracias, and let's do prayer.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. So let us close in prayer. This is the Decada prayer, and I'm going to do it in English, and you can just follow this along. God of love and mercy, we give you thanks for the journey of encuentro, dialogue, and communion, in which the Church walks ahead to welcome the dreams of the young, to accompany and send forth the young, sending them with the joy of the gospel as missionary disciples, witnesses of your love. Fill us with the light and strength of your Holy Spirit, in order that in this very moment we move from dreams to action, from encounter to mission. Send us deep into the ocean to together cast the net. With courage and enthusiasm, may we embrace the project of your kingdom, the path of love, with renewed commitment on the missionary journey. We ask this of you in the name of your resurrected Son, with the intercession of our Blessed Mother Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and that of all the patron saints of young people. Amen.
Amen.
Bueno, muchas
Thank you
gracias.
so
This has been
much.
your Cafecito en Conversación on, let's talk about faith-based service, cómo los jóvenes transforman nuestro mundo. Muchas gracias, Jocelyn. Thank you very much. Gracias, Alberto. Gracias, Maureen. Gracias, William. And of course, gracias, Hani. And gracias, Cecilia, for, putting in a little bit there. So we'll see you in another time. God bless. Dios los bendiga.
Thanks.